Illinois college football schedule preview and point spread prediction videos. Today we're getting the Illinois Fighting Illini. So Illinois' non-conference schedule is about the same this year as it was last year. They get two guaranteed wins against Western Illinois, which is a FCS team, and Western Michigan, which is a group of five team. And then they have a Power Four non-conference opponent that is not terrible, but not great. Duke and with that one being on the road, I think that one's going to be a pretty tough game for Illinois, and I think it will be close. And I wouldn't be surprised if Illinois lost that one. And Illinois' conference schedule is a lot different this year than it was last year. They have six different opponents. So last year they played Michigan, Oregon, Minnesota, Nebraska, Penn State, and Michigan State. And instead, they will play Indiana, Ohio State, USC, Washington, Wisconsin, and Maryland. And I think this is an easier conference schedule this year than it was last year because of last year they played three of the good teams in the Big Ten, Michigan, Oregon, and Penn State. And this year they'll only play two of the good conference teams from last season, Indiana and Ohio State. And while I realize Michigan was not that good last year, I do think it's a good thing for Illinois to not have to play them this year because I think Michigan is going to be back to being a good team. And Ohio State is the only game on Illinois' schedule that I don't think Illinois has really any chance of winning. Because while I do think Illinois might be able to compete in this game, Ohio State I think is just too talented and too well coached for Illinois to be able to win it. But I would say Illinois' ceiling is 11-1 because they have so much coming back from last season. Team that won 10 games, and this might be the easiest schedule in the Big Ten. And I know it's got to be one of the top 10 easiest schedules in the country. But I do think it's very unlikely that Illinois goes 11-1. But the schedule does give them a decent chance to get to the college football playoff. So Illinois' first bye week, I think, comes at a good time because it comes right after Ohio State, which is going to be the best team they uh, play. So Illinois is probably going to be worn out after that game, and then it comes right before a road game against Washington. That is a team that I think will for sure be good enough to have a chance to beat Illinois if Illinois is uh, tired because Illinois was not good last year because they were really talented. It was because they were well coached by Brett Balaam and Illinois' at second bye week. I think comes at a bad time because it comes right before Maryland and Illinois getting to play Maryland, I think, was another thing that made the new conference schedule easier because Maryland was a terrible team last year. They only won four games and they only won one conference game. And I've not seen anything that makes me think Maryland is going to be much better this year. I am very confident in Illinois being able to win that game. And the toughest part of this schedule, I would say, is the two in a row of Indiana and USC. So Indiana does return 61% of their production, and that's actually a decent amount because they also had the 17th ranked group of transfers. And the difference, though, is last year's transfer portal group by Indiana, a lot of it was players that Kirk Cincinnati had brought with them to Indiana from James Madison, and this year they'll all be new players to him. But I think Cincinnati is good at player development and game planning and game time coaching. So this is going to be a very tough one for Illinois. And USC will be tough because of their explosive offense. And I don't question Lincoln Riley with the quarterback or the wide receivers or the running backs. While they may not have a great running back this year, I'm sure they'll have a couple of good running backs. What I question him on is the offensive line, and that would be concerning for Southern Cal because the Illinois returns a lot from what was a pretty good defense last year that held Penn State to just 21 points and held South Carolina to just 17 points in the bowl game, and Illinois returns a strong offensive line. So I'd have to feel good about Illinois' chances in the USC game, but I think it's likely that Illinois loses one of Indiana and USC. And Purdue and Northwestern, while I wouldn't call those guaranteed wins for Illinois, because Illinois is not like Ohio State where you can just mark those games as wins. It would be very shocking if Illinois were to lose either one of those games. And if Illinois does lose to Purdue or Northwestern, it probably means last year was kind of a fluke because both teams were horrible last year, especially Purdue. Last year's Purdue team was one of the worst Power Four teams I've ever seen, and I've not really seen anything from either team that makes me think they're going to be much better this year. And then Rutgers and Wisconsin, it wouldn't be surprising if Illinois lost one of those. So now for the point spread prediction. Games in the green are games where I think Illinois will be favored to win by a blowout, 20 or more points. There's two of those, Western Illinois and Western Michigan. Games in the blue are games where I think they'll be favored to win by double digits, 10 to 19 points. And there's three of those, Purdue, Maryland, and Northwestern. Games in the purple are games where I think they'll be favored to win by about a touchdown, 6 to 9 points, and there's three of those. Washington, Rutgers, and Wisconsin. Games in the pink are games where I think they'll be favored to win by about a field goal, 1 to 5 points, and there's two of those, Duke and USC. Games in the gray are games where I think Illinois will be about a field goal underdog, 1 to 5 points, and there's one of those. Indiana. Games in the orange are games where I think Illinois will be a double digit underdog, so 10 to 19 points, and there's one of those. Ohio State. So Western Illinois, Illinois should be favored in that one by like 45 points, and Western Michigan, Illinois should be favored by about 30 points. And Purdue, Illinois should be favored by a couple of touchdowns, maybe 14 points. And Maryland and Northwestern, Illinois should be favored by about 10. And Duke, Illinois, I'll say, will be favored by 3 points in that one. And USC, I think Illinois will be favored by 3 or 4 points in that one. And Washington, I think Illinois will be favored by, I'll say, 6 points. And Rutgers, I think Illinois will be favored by, I'll say, 7 points. That one would be in the pink if it was the road game. And Wisconsin, I think Illinois will be favored by, I'll say, 6 points. And Ohio State, I think Illinois will be an underdog by about 2 touchdowns, maybe 14 points. And Indiana, I think, will be favored over Illinois by about 3 points. So that will be it with this video. Please subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon.